Ready when you are.
Oh, is it on? Hello? Is this thing working? Hi, Sid. It's good to be with you. I'm back in San Francisco this week, living La Vida Local. Very nice to be here. And I've been working on that one all day. Thanks for laughing, Jay. Uh, so good to be here. Jay and I had a good discussion, decided we're going to try to so we're adapting the format based on your feedback last week. We have sort of a written document for our agenda for tomorrow, following the Gitlab one-on-one best practices. But we think that the right way to organize this video is to sort of structure sort of three big areas that we want to just give updates on: product, customers and market, and company building. So that's kind of the structure that we're going to try for this video and see how that goes. So I guess I'll lead off. Product has been fantastic this week. I think the MVP of the team goes to Mark, who joined on Monday. Yay, and already has an app up and running. So we sent you a link to the very first Double GDP application running on Heroku, running on Ruby on Rails, because after our last conversation, Mark said, "Oh, well, I'm a big fan of Ruby as well, so we'll just switch over to that." And then and Ruby 6 came out last week, and he was like, "It has great React support, so let's use that." And then he has some CI stuff already set up, looking at linting and at a test suite. So I haven't even had a chance to dive into it, but I'm excited to learn about what he has set up. So we sent you a link to the actual app and to the GitLab repo, so you can poke around if you'd like. But just really exciting progress, and many kudos to Mark. So that's it for product and customers market. Jay, over to you.
Yeah, well, let me give a quick update on the customer and market side. Most important and interesting conversation that we had this week was with a woman who works for a small solar startup that has basically kind of chosen Zambia as their second major market in Africa to serve. So we talked to her a little bit about like what it was like to move the startup into Zambia. So she's headquartered right now out of Lusaka. Talked to us a lot about Lusaka specifically. Talked about doing business in Zambia. Talked about a lot of the mobile connectivity and availability of various different types of devices and all that kind of stuff. And then just generally what the business environment is like there. A couple cool things to share. First of all, number one cool thing to share, like she's been to Ninkwashi. I guess like some of the concerts that Muya and team have been hosting there have really like attracted folks from Lusaka to come and see the city. So she totally understood exactly what we were doing when I shared the story of us working with Ninkwashi on that. Big things to know. Number one, she remarked, similar to all the conversations we've had with Muya, about how much construction is going on around Lusaka and just broadly across Zambia. Her primary market is serving much more rural customers, so a very different customer base than the ones that we're talking to right now. But lots and lots of construction happening. At the same time, we spent a bunch of time talking about the risk of that construction. Especially with some really significant amounts of debt that the Zambian government has with China to fund a lot of that construction, and just kind of some regular currency devaluation happening against the U.S. dollar. A risk that I think we really need to continue to monitor, just importantly so, right? It was the one that she called out, which is like all that construction is happening, but as currency continues to fluctuate, a lot of that emerging middle class and kind of like upper middle class may be very pressed in terms of cost of living. So the affordability of that construction is I think a big question. Certainly it calls back to us in terms of what are the things that we can do to help people building those new communities to maintain costs and keep them deeply efficient, because there's this high awareness that cost of living just generally could become a lot more expensive in the next 5 years, let's say. So interesting learning on that one. Second one just had to do with like how important Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter and things like that are for doing business. She said that actually most of the companies that are out there, like no one ever looks at a website. What they look at are the Facebook page. And then the Facebook page for companies are actually one of the primary kind of like communication tools for telling a business's story. I think a really important thing for us to be aware of that, like maybe our LinkedIn and Facebook pages are more important than our website as we continue to do business out there. She kind of understood our target market as being like, having visited Nkwashi, she's like, oh yeah, that's like a much more like kind of like upper class, like upper middle target. Now remember, like she's primarily servicing like deep, remote, rural Zambia and a very different customer base, so she's got that in her head. But she was saying, yeah, all of your customers very much going to probably have like either like pretty good Samsung or pretty good Huawei phones as like the ones that are kind of like biggest over there. Two primary telecommunication providers. MTN was one. I have the other one in my notes. And like lots of mobile pay happening across those networks. Mobile money on MTN is like MTN is one of the most typical ones. The way that folks end up kind of like using that is that they just like go to the MTN service centers, right? Put like $100 or whatever, put cash onto the phone, and then a lot of payment happens through mobile pay, just using your MTN system. So those were probably the three biggest things, like observation of what business is like in Lusaka right now, how much construction is going on, paying attention to devaluation, and just a little bit about the availability of technology. She's going to introduce us to somebody who's a real estate agent in Lusaka, so that we can have a conversation about like what, beyond Nkwashi, what the typical buy and rent experience in Lusaka is like right now. And that's the next steps on the customer and market side.
Great. And then finally on company building, Jay and I started working on onboarding materials and just trying to think about how to bring on new contractors and build company culture. So I think some of the things that we've been thinking of there, we very much want to model Double GDP culture off of the culture built at Gitlab, and so thinking about credit and what that means, and then trying to start our onboarding with a little bit of like history and vision, almost talking about sort of where the company comes from, what was the initial inspiration, why are you thinking about this kind of problem. And then vision is something where like we can have a company vision, but certainly at this early stage, we also want to invite storytelling and hearing vision from each person about what inspires them to in what they've heard and why they're even wanting to work with us, but also sort of what inspires them about the vision of sort of what software for new cities can bring and what new cities can bring to the world. So trying to make that very interactive and sort of aspirational in the way that we bring new people on.
Yeah.
And then we have, administrative. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, highly relevant right now because we got some new folks that we're onboarding next week or the end of this week, which is like so exciting.
Yeah, and I should say, super thrilled to have our first contract engineer, our lead engineer, joining us, and we are still talking with our designer. That's not been finalized. I'm going to meet with him later this afternoon or later this evening to sort of go through a few questions that he has. And then our next step is to start looking to a couple of contract engineers in Africa. So we're starting to set our sights there and think about what it's going to take to find the right talent there and to help bring them on board easily. And then we just have administrative things in onboarding and administrative and more tactical, going through goals and sprints and things like that. But I think the more interesting topic is thinking about culture and how we bring people on. Anyway, please, Jay.
Yeah, so to key off of what you just said there, Nolan, in terms of culture, And especially to key off of like, what can this business, right, Double GDP, learn from a lot of the things that GitLab has done really well. And if you think about it, Sid, right, like one of the first times that Nolan and I worked with you, right, like we shadowed you for a day at GitLab, like to kind of observe that culture. And if you think about what the charter city movement is most about, right? The charter city movement is most about helping new communities, new cities, new municipalities learn from the best practices and or build off the best practices of all sorts of other cities who have come before, so that they can do it less expensively, right? They can just adopt those existing best practices in terms of, economic structures, in terms of governance structures, all this kind of stuff. We had a lot of long conversations with Mark Letter about that type of stuff. And I kind of feel like if we're a software company that is providing that need for cities, we too should think about like, how do we best adopt best practices for our own company? And it strikes me that like, if we're building an engineering culture, the best and like remote-based engineering culture that we know right now, but amongst the three of us, is GitLab's. And what did you do? Well, you encoded it into a handbook, right? Like, so you actually like have created kind of an operating system for GitLab in this handbook. And I kind of feel like we should like basically copy as much of those best practices that over as we're starting up this new organization, so that we start this new organization up efficiently, right? Like, so that it's built off of off that kind of best practices. And so when Nolan said, hey, like we're going to start by sharing the values of credit as kind of like core to what Double GDP is about, like that's why. Now here's the thing, and I think we're going to need your help with on this one, Sid. Like as we move like one in in the culture of one organization into another, I think we need to be very intentional and choiceful as to how we're doing that, right? Like, which parts come first, why, and to what degree is this new organization like really kind of understanding the why behind those choices of like, what, we're going to do updates this way, and we're going to follow the agenda format from A, B, C, and use some of like the code words or whatever that have become very much like parlance of great remote work culture on your team at GitLab. Like, I want to do that, but I think we basically take it step by step. So anyway, I got to imagine this is the start of a series of long conversations with you about how we set this culture up to be like most efficiently productive. And yeah, we're starting it right now. So that's the why behind the ways in which we're kind of thinking about sharing that during onboarding with these new folks over the next week.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. And so we've teed that up as a discussion topic for tomorrow. So that is a great lead into just sort of thinking through what we would like to hear your input in and what would be most useful for discussion for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. Anything else you wanted to cover, Jay?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Been a really kind of like amazing sprint here because we like got so much done on the company building side, right? Like, first application up, pretty cool.
Yeah. And this is only like a few days since last time we spoke too. So it's amazing to even be able to have progress in a short period of time. So that's I don't know. It's really exciting.
Cool.
It's exciting to see it coming together. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you.